Hi, everybody. I'm here with Tanya Yarkoni, mother to an autist, Leia,
Leah.
and we are here to talk about caregiving, nervous system regulation, and she's embarked on an exciting project in Costa Rica to support families, to support her daughter first, obviously, and how her life has evolved being a caregiver of this very unique, beyond verbal autist, and how it has inspired her to be who she is today. So, those of you who don't know me very well, I'm Susan Oros, my daughter. The background images of my daughter, Sammy, Samantha, but I call her Sammy still because it's a more loving term in a way, but she is like an adult now. She's 26 and she's been guiding me for many, many years as well. And we've certainly had our challenges. But what I've learned from her is just amazing. But I don't want to take a lot of time and introduce myself. You can use our links below to um, get to know us better if you're interested. So today I want to talk to Tanya Yarkoni. And Tanya, if you want to take a few moments and introduce yourself. Her links are also below, and you can follow up with our website and other social media places that she's in. So Tanya,
Okay. Well, firstly, thank you, Susan, for everything that you do. And I just hear your voice, and it, for me, is something very comforting as you also present things that are so um, growth inspiring as well. And I really admire the way that you combine both in the way that you do. And so I thank you for inviting me today. Our story actually started in Brooklyn, New York, even though I, as you can hear, have a English accent. Um, Leah, who is our second daughter, was born there, and quite quickly it became clear that she wasn't developing the way her sister was, and we've all been on these paths, so I don't need to sort of say too much about that, other than that obviously it changed my life at that point. And without any guidance or training, it was all about focusing on Leah and how to help her through what all these challenges that were coming up today. She is, as you said, she's non-speaking. She is also has all sorts of developmental delays. And for the longest time, I was just trying to fix her. And it was really a series of events that happened for me that started to help me understand that actually there was this growth piece that I was supposed to be embarking on that I had no idea. Like nobody had ever presented this as, Tanya, you are about to face a major challenge in your life and you will grow. So that wasn't that second part of the sentence I wasn't given the memo. So I was just, Tanya, you're here to suffer. And so I followed that mandate of suffering. And I was very lucky that I had this girl who was quite younger than me, who was helping me with Leah at the time. She was around 3 or 4, and she kept saying, you need to go and do Vipassana meditation, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And she'd done a couple and she was like, it's really going to help you, Tanya. And I was like, how is sitting in the lotus pose, other than, maybe that will be a break for me? How is this possibly going to help me? And um, eventually I went. She was like, I'll take care of everything. You just need to go and do that. So I was very lucky that I had someone in my life that allowed me to go off and do that 10-day silent meditation retreat. And one of the biggest things that happened during that retreat was a realization that I was central to, at that point, certainly my misery. that my thoughts were the thing that were keeping me in a very specific loop and in a very specific mindset. And that was really the beginning of seeing that my thoughts were central to my reality. And, obviously, now when we start to consider the concept of thoughts, and certainly as it relates to our children and telepathy, and are these my thoughts, are they their thoughts,
Yeah.
are we in one mind of billions of thoughts? So where are all these thoughts coming from? How much is my conditioning and my environment? How much is my negativity bias? How much is based on how much coffee I drank this morning, right? So our thoughts, and this is really something that I have explored at depth since then, but not again in a very non-linear way, but our thoughts are central to our reality. And since then, I would also apply energy into that formula as well. To At that point, I started to understand, well, I need to take some kind of responsibility in the way that I'm thinking. And nobody had ever spoken to me in this way. And I had only been led to believe that I am a victim of
Mhm.
circumstances. Fast forward a few more years, I was then homeschooling Leah. By this point, I'd taken her out of the school. It was like, this is just not gonna serve my child. It all happened very dramatically. I am not a militant homeschooler. I had no idea about homeschooling, but it suddenly became very clear that if I left her in that school where she was, which was a school for, as they described it then, she had low cognition and low function and everything was low, and
Yeah.
and I just felt like, okay, I've given up on my kid and she's 7. And but nobody again had told me, well, you could think differently or you have choices. Or so a series of events led to my eventually homeschooling Leah with at the time we were doing Sunrise.
Mm.
And Sunrise was just quite liberating, actually. And
Mm.
at the very first sort of introductory meeting, I'll never forget this, there were like 70 families from around the world. We had all arrived there desperate. This felt like the last resort. What are we going to do? If this doesn't work, nothing's going to work. And I remember the woman who was leading the this program, she was interviewing families on the first row. And there was Judith from Perth, right? And she's like, oh, so what's your name? My name's Judith. I'm from Perth. So Judith, tell us about yourself. Oh, well, I've got 2 kids on the spectrum. And this was, I want to say when this was at least now about 12 years ago. Okay.
Mm.
And there was this visible sort of, oh, 2 kids on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Oh, 1, like 2, like what's that going to look like? And and there was sort of like this complete sinking of energy in the room, thinking about Judith on the first row. And this woman who was leading this program was like, 2 kids on the spectrum. Wow, what an amazing opportunity. And I had never heard anybody say, like, having 2 kids on the spectrum was an amazing opportunity. And it literally threw me into a somersault of why? Like, what's going on here? Like, am I missing something?
Hmm.
And that was profound, to be honest. At
Yeah.
that point, suddenly realizing, oh, like something else is happening here, and I'm just not in the I'm not receiving the information in the right way, and I'm also not thinking about what's happening to me in the right way either.
Yeah. The perspective.
And then the third thing that happened to me, and this was quite unrelated, but carrying on homeschooling. Then we put her in these intensives, and we're still in fixing mode. But I'm now becoming more aware of that I have this responsibility for myself in this story
Mm.
that's unfolding here. And how I show up is based on what I can do for myself. And because I'd done this homeschooling program, seeing very quickly the impact of my energy, my thoughts on my daughter, and how we were able to connect and communicate in that room, which, there was nothing going on in that room. All the mandate was just follow her lead. And there
Mm.
was not a lot going on. So I was spent hours not doing very much, but just being with Leah in
Mhm.
in presence. And that was very challenging in all sorts of ways because my ego was not being seen there. Like
Mhm.
she was paying any attention to Tanya in that room. It brought up a lot.
Mhm. I understand.
And then I'll stop after this last but shifting point um, was that I ended up after homeschooling starting to feel a little stir crazy and okay, I've kept my child in cotton wool. Somehow she's got to get back into some kind of schooling system. She was older now. She was more confident. There was, she wasn't doing what they said she was going to be doing. Like, oh, she'll be communicating way better by that. That wasn't happening, but there was a relationship there and there was a kind of confidence there between us that wasn't there beforehand. And that was very deep. And so I was feeling like, okay, she's ready to go back out into the world. And guess what? So am I. And so I was like, I'm ready to go and get a job. I want to go out into the world and get a job. And at this point, I haven't mentioned this bit, and it's particularly, I don't know if we want to say relevant or what it is, but I was living in Israel at the time. And um, I ended up going to work for this cybersecurity venture creation fund that was extremely high energy, very smart people with this mindset of we can fix and solve anything, right?
Mm. Mhm.
All we need to do is apply our thoughts and maybe we'll bring in someone fresh who's never looked at the problem like this before, but like this is a problem, we'll find a way to solve it.
Mm.
And being in that kind of environment with quite entitled people, yes,
Mhm.
but at the same time, very confident people and very smart people who, and I was like, well, they're not going to solve my problems, right? They can maybe
Mhm.
solve cybersecurity problems. They're not going to solve Tanya's problems. But what I absorbed during that time was the amount of money that was being thrown at them solving
Mm.
problems as
Uh-huh.
opposed to what's going on the caregiving world. Like, I mean, we're barely pulling it together here. It's like we're not getting any support, we're not getting anything.
Yeah.
Actually did start to get some support and did start to understand what's going on in our world and did start to understand why we behave the way we do. And actually, if um, we're given a path, we could start to practice living a different reality for ourselves. Because what I started to understand was that I could rethink caregiving in the same way as they were rethinking cyber.
Mm.
Rethinking caregiving thing led me to start then becoming a coach with caregivers. And it was really very, you know, it was very organic. Like I just
Mhm.
started to help people. And
Mhm.
because I understood that I was now seeing my reality based on mindfulness training and my observations of my reality and the wisdom that was coming through as a result of that. And yes, I now understand also Leah guiding me through this process.
Yeah.
That I was starting to help people move out of feeling like they are in a prison with a
Mm-hmm.
specific set of, facts that they can say, well, these are the facts, and this
Yeah.
is going through what I'm going through. And I can go, yeah, I understand those facts. But I also understand today that how we live around our facts
Mm-hmm.
is a game changer, frankly. And then what's become even more interesting now, and specifically as we're starting to get these kids coming through with spelling and telepathy, is that now more than ever, and it's for me, this is kind of like, oh, finally,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, parents, I can't do this without you now taking the responsibility to regulate yourself, to
Mm-hmm.
to see how central you are to my experience each day.
Yeah.
And that can be quite overwhelming to think about that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because it requires us to go through a profound process of, I'm going to say, unconditioning ourselves,
Yeah.
or rewiring ourselves for something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can so relate to so many of the things, that you said, because I've had experiences like that where you're trying to fix. And I remember probably about 12, 13 years ago as well, experiencing like, okay, I'm seeing all these things going on with Sammy. There's something else going on. I get that. And then yet the reality out in the world, is not conducive to our kids who are vulnerable
Yes.
in this world to go out there. And so I got stuck in still trying to fix, because it's like, okay, well, all the spiritual stuff, it may be very nice, but it still doesn't address like the long-term thing, of what is going on in the world, that this is the way it operates. And just like your experience with the cybersecurity, this very rigid mental linear processing of, yeah, if we just get the facts and we now understand how the brain works and how brain waves work, and so now we can fix everything just by these artificial kinds of mechanisms, let's say. I mean, they're introducing, things like even telepathy, right, through devices and things. They want to put chips in your head, or some of them, I mean, these crazy things. And so it is challenging to maneuver through that and still hold that awareness that there is something bigger going on than us, and then to change your thoughts. So I really respect you for noticing your thoughts, because I mean, I think it took me maybe many more years, and kind of going back and forth and feeling like a victim, because it's when the quote physical reality doesn't change, and you're still struggling with these kinds of daily things that may go on, the unpredictability, like you said, then, and that stress, it really is hard to get out of that loop, like you're saying. But definitely, I feel like, Tanya, when you were saying that you felt like there was nothing going on, you were just connecting with Leia, and you were following her around, taking her lead, and like we weren't doing anything. I was like, oh no, there's a lot going on there. There was a lot happening, and Leia was transmitting a lot of information to you. That's my feeling. Kind of through that instinct, that intuition, the kinesthetic way, right? Because it seems like you just knew. You just knew when to change something, when to shift something, you know. So even the whole cybersecurity aspect, like, okay, you go and try that, mom, and then, there'll be something for you to learn there. And then,
There was and each it is amazing, Susan, because you start to realize that in some way, or certainly this has been my case, I feel I have been groomed to do what I am now about to embark on.
mm-hmm,
And so, what I haven't, there's other pieces of this, certainly around COVID time, which was another massive shakeup for the planet. For me, another knowing came in, which was, okay, now you need to go and study again, Tanya. Like,
mm,
oh, you need more tools, you need to understand this more. And so I went on this, radical path of studying. And it wasn't traditional studying. So it was, I was studying. Firstly, it started with Joe Dispenza, but then I was
mm-hmm.
I was guided to actually study with Joe Dispenza's teacher, who is Ramtha, and Ramtha is
Oh,
a 35,000-year-old entity that's channeled through a lady called Jay-Z Knight. And
yeah. Mm-hmm,
again, these aren't things. If you'd have gone, and even when I say I've been groomed for this, I came from a very, very, I would say, quite mainstream. There was nothing sort of radical in my childhood that happened. I definitely grew up in a spiritual home. My father is a rabbi. So I was exposed to the spiritual aspect of myself. I
mm-hmm,
was from a very young age. I was later able to learn, and this then came through another teacher that I had, and this was all since COVID, this real understanding of, when we speak about spirituality, not so much about, and there's nothing I've got against crystals and rocks and walking around in white clothing, but actually we are all spirits,
mm-hmm.
and each one of us has a spiritual journey. And understanding how our spiritual journey is a path to, I would like to say, returning back to our true potential and self, and returning back to source. And
Mm-hmm.
that path um, requires some inner knowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that inner knowing is often things we cannot explain, we just know. And I have, since I did this studying, certainly in the last few years, I have had that knowing has been something that I have sought and encouraged. And certainly, as we are now faced with everything that we are faced with in the world, um, I am more and more aware of that my knowing is something that is a necessity for me to guide my way through. And, this, on one hand, we can go, well, you're deluding yourself, Tanya. But on the other hand, I have not found any other way to be that seems more honest or true. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
each one of us has to rely on this knowing and trust that it's taking us in a direction that we feel is aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can feel Sammy coming in and saying, this is why these autists are here, is one of the pivotal reasons, is because we've been disconnected from our knowing, that we became too linear mental thinkers. And when everything is here, then we forget about our sensory system and all the information that's coming to us through our sensory system, right? It's the body, it's the moving, the somatic kinds of channels that we have. And so what Sammy has shown me is that's why they are more sensory sensitive, because we forgot. And so they receive information from source through her, through their sensory channels. And, they're all different, just like we're all different. But I still remember that one of the earliest pieces of information that Sammy had given me is that her sensory channels are her communication links with source, you know? And so that's the experiential communication. We talk about in these spiritual circles and things that we're an expression of source, that we're here to experience as the source, the great spirit, experiences. And how would source do that except through our sensory system? And so we're designed physically, the human blueprint, if that our genetics, which comes from God, source, is to experience and kind of be like this mirroring and feedback loop, and that's what we had forgotten. That's what we lost connection with, and that intuitive knowing is such a big piece, and it's before words, it's pre-verbal, right? You can't explain why you know what you know, or this feeling as you've experienced, right? The awakening within that and that knowing. Then once you are really becoming more in touch with your true self as a unique expression, that it's becoming more and more unshakable. And the other point that I want to make here is, like, for other parents who are watching this series, or other practitioners, because, right, we're not just talking for the parents, but to help hopefully other practitioners who are working with these families to so that they can gain a different perspective and understanding. And Tanya is the third in this series so far. That I've done two others. If you all want to watch it, it's on our Patreon publicly, and they're on our YouTube channel. But how different each parent is. Like, I want to highlight how different each of the parents and the families are, and the path that led them to their own inner healing, their awakening, their knowledge, and now how, they're serving other families and really the planet. Because I really feel like these individuals, these unique souls, are here to serve the planet. They're not here to just be difficult and, you know, and not fit the mold in our medical system, our educational system, all the systems that we've built from this distorted kind of mindset and thinking. They're here in service. They're here to show us what is wrong. Regardless of whether you think vaccines cause autism or not, and I have my own, theory about that. But I feel like they're born with different genetics. They call that a mutation, so they don't function like the rest of the humans. But, like, this is a good thing, don't you think? Look at the problems that we've created by continuously thinking the same way. Like you're saying, in the same patterns of thinking, the same looping patterns, we're only going to keep recreating the same thing over and over again. So anyway, so if you could talk more about the nervous system, and then in nervous system regulation, caregivers, and how that kind of unfolded and related. I'd love to know more
Yeah.
about that.
So I was working with the general caregiver population, so not specific to family, parents of children. And because and I still believe this, that ultimately the caregiver, let's call it syndrome, is the same. It's a universal experience. Like you become a caregiver to someone, a loved one, and you go through a series of experiences. And even though I would probably say short-term caregiving, let's say for someone who is going to pass within a short period of time, when I say short, it could be 2, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different experience to certainly what we're going through, which is this lifetime experience. So there is a difference between that, but ultimately I see many commonalities between us all. But what I specifically learnt, and this was I volunteered at a speller camp in California. And that was just now in October. And it was amazing. Just
Hmm.
the whole atmosphere there was just, it felt like a festival. And it was beyond exciting to be in that environment with a group of families and kids, and it was just next level.
Hmm.
And actually now we're planning to do one in Costa Rica with that organization in
Oh,
November.
that's great.
That's really fun as well. But what came away, one of the things that was really coming up, because there was a lot of facilitators that they have at these camps, was just the challenge that the physios and the OTs were having with the families, who a lot of these OTs are also trained to be practitioners and to work with families to help them with spelling, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing the challenges that the parents were going through. Um, and the camp is actually run by Autistically Inclined in California, and by a lady called Julie Sando, she's amazing. And
Hmm.
so, oh, you go, brilliant. Okay, sorry, I'm reading the chat here at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah, no, that's okay. No.
So anyway, so during my time there volunteering, I was speaking with OTs and practitioners, and they were just saying how difficult it was for the parents to co-regulate with their kids.
Yeah.
And with all of my background, both as a caregiver, as a mindfulness meditation teacher now, with my understanding of where we place our thoughts and energy, with my understanding now of why our brains behave the way they do when we're in survival mode,
Yes.
and also just have building a completely different relationship with how we are managing ourselves
Mm-hmm.
in space, and then as it relates to our children, how we are co-regulating in space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I ended up partnering with one of the facilitators from that camp, a lady called Katie Kittle. And Katie and I started to build a program together. And we ran we're in the middle, actually, coming to the end of our first program,
Mm.
which is an 8-week regulation journey. And really it's breaking down what is going on here and starting to realize our centrality, which obviously people already understand, like, okay, yes, I'm getting in the way here.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question becomes, so how do I become more aware of myself, and what is necessary for me to slow down my system, which has been on alert, and frankly is now addicted to a very specific set of chemical experiences in my body.
Mm.
That process of starting to realize that even sort of small changes can have big ripple effects not only for yourself, but for, let's say, co-regulating with a loved one and spelling,
Mm-hmm.
is something that I think parents are just starting to wrap their heads around. And
Mm-hmm.
it's it's because that conditioning then, and realizing, well, if I don't think this way, who am I?
Yeah, right?
Right? What
Mm-hmm.
am I?
Yeah.
Why am I thinking the way that I'm thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Whose thoughts am I having? What
Mm-hmm.
other thoughts could I be having? How
Mm-hmm.
do I practice those? Well, if I'm this kind of person in the morning when I wake up, then I'm much more aware of those kinds of thoughts that are dominating my experience that day. Like, this sounds all very intellectual, but on a day-to-day level, when you start to practice it,
Yeah.
just small things that you can do and seeing the impact of that. We are seeing parents who are beginning to realize that they have the ability to change
Mm-hmm.
themselves, their relationship, the way that their children are able to come into the room. You know, if they feel their parent is carrying a lot of guilt, if they feel like their parent is just waiting for them to, you know, spell, that immediately just, that is just such a hard thing for an apraxic body to carry.
Yeah.
Not to mention, as you also say, you know, their sensitivity,
Mm-hmm.
which we have shut down in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know, I meet with many caregivers who are just numb.
Mm-hmm.
It, it's almost dangerous to feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And feeling, you know, if they start to feel like they're feeling like, I don't know where those, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stop the amount of emotion that I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a process that needs to be held
Yeah.
and understood.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to get stuck on it either.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we are we are highly dynamic, adaptive
Mm-hmm.
entities
Mm-hmm.
that actually our emotions are here for us,
Yes.
create meaning in the world, and also to evolve,
Yeah.
right? They allow us, once you've had an emotion, I don't know how many times, and then at some point you're like, I don't need that emotion anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're now bypassing that emotion. It means that experience, you have received the download sufficiently that you now no longer need to relive that experience again. Like, I'm done with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting when you say, I'm done with that.
Mm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? When you say, I am done with that, and you know with full certainty you are done with that, you will not need to be experiencing that again.
Mm-hmm. 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 You know, one of the things when I first came across you on your Instagram was how openly, you know, you talk about, well, at times you use the word trauma to feel traumatized, you know, because there has been like this, and I've definitely felt it like, oh, we can't talk about that. We have to pretend that these kids are unique. They're so unique that we're having these amazing experiences all the time. And it's not like that, you know, in reality. And some families' reality is more than others, depending on how their level of sensitivity. And again, that is all different as well. Not all the kids are as sensitive as some other ones. There's different varying degrees. And so this idea of pretending everything is hunky-dory when you are having this experience, I felt like it was very refreshing to hear. And I felt like if even acknowledging that for myself, you know, and is kind of a self-care mechanism, that the human body is having this experience, and yet there's this amazing aspect that's also simultaneously happening. And just in the last several months, maybe a year, really embracing that I can absolutely have both. And Sammy she's the most amazing human that I know. And just the cosmic kinds of information and things that she can relay is just beyond the mind. But for me, it was like being able to acknowledge both, that this is stressful and the unpredictability of it can be really hard. It was there's something about it. There was something about it for me physically, with the physical body, this relationship of soul and body, spirit and body, that if I was denying that my body, like maybe like 3 years ago, just started revolting. Like, this is not, this is not a good experience for me. The human self, and I had to kind of acknowledge that, and then take steps within our family too, because I haven't had a lot of support over the last 8 or 9 years, and there are other families that are like that, where they've had no respite for years, because they can't find anybody who could provide that level of care for someone who, for some of our kids who are adult, even especially when they're adults, to that degree. But I'm just saying this for others who may be able to relate to it, that it was almost like my body was rejecting this idea of embodiment, because it's like, okay, soul, you're telling me that you're going to embody, because it's the idea of like the higher self having been kind of maybe outside of us at a higher dimensional level, and now we're being called to really embody all of it, and that my body was rejecting like this embodiment, like, you have not been you have not been this blueprint, this life that you planned, quote planned, has not been all that friendly to me, in a sense. So for me, I had to kind of acknowledge that, and then take more active steps to for self-care, have time to myself, those kinds of things, to now where embracing all of that, embracing all the experiences that that I can embody more fully. And I'm noticing that Sammy, well, there's a lot of changes going on the planet as well, but she's dropping more into her the sacral and the root and things herself. So I'm just putting that out there for other parents who may be able to relate to that.
I would add to that at all given moments, you have access to all versions of self.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, when we either experience very high gamma waves, or if we go into lower alpha and lower waves, those lower, or those change in brainwave states,
Mm-hmm.
allow us to access wider information than when we are in our survival state. And
Yes.
there are other pieces to this, right? So 96% of what you do all day is subconsciously happening. You're not even aware of it. It's a program. You're just doing it. You've been doing it for a very long time. So on one hand, unless you very consciously and intentionally make change,
Mm-hmm.
you will probably you're just pressing play each day.
Mm-hmm.
So the intentional piece here, which is what our kids are asking from us at this time,
Mm-hmm.
is 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 profound because it's saying, well, you have access to a lot more information than you currently believe is true.
Mm-hmm.
When you go into these other brainwave states, you start to receive it. And that information, once you start to embody it, allows you to function both in a subconscious way, but then you'll be looking for more of that around you, right? So if I had, when the first time I heard about Tanya, Leah wants you to become telepathic,
Mm-hmm.
I had never, apart from Helen DaCosta's son, Zhao, who had written about it, 3 months before I actually heard I need to become telepathic, which was before the telepathy tapes came out, but I was not on that path at all.
Mm-hmm.
It never even occurred to me. So, but I was open at that point to receiving that information.
Mm-hmm.
And so becoming open to receive information is something that I think is something of a new concept, to be honest. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we've been so systems focused and so conditioned to believe that there is mainly one way to do something, or one way certainly to think about something.
Mm-hmm.
And to now consider, well, this actually could be something much bigger, much wider, is on one level overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why we have something called our reticular activating system, which is sort of this filter at the base of our head, between
Mm-hmm.
the base of the head and the neck, which literally is a filter system that pushes stuff out and allows other stuff to stay in. So, for example, if you're in a restaurant and you're chatting to someone and there's the waiter and the coffee machine and the music, you're able to block that out and just
Yeah.
listen to your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we do that all day long. But at the same time, if you suddenly were like, oh, I really like that new gray Toyota car that's just come out, and then all of a sudden you're seeing gray Toyota cars everywhere,
Mm.
right? It's because you've now become open to something that now starts to become common thinking.
Mm.
Common thinking is where we want to be hanging out. But
Mm.
the question is, what are we commonly thinking?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that is what I am now, if I was to sort of look at where we're going and the creation or the co-creation that's taking place now here,
Mm-hmm.
is start to think about a completely different paradigm for us to consider around the subject of care,
Mm-hmm.
our children,
Mm-hmm.
the way we communicate, our sense of belonging, our sense of self-prioritization,
Mm-hmm.
co-regulation, all these words that sort of, they sound like jargon at this point, but actually then becomes common thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know there's so many different avenues that we can go in, but so maybe we could talk about Casa Leia and how that all relates to your vision and what you've been guided to do, Casa Leia in Costa Rica. These I don't want to call it a group home or anything, but yeah, maybe you could talk more about that and how this new different way of thinking and experiencing ties in with Leia's life and how it how you I don't know if envisioning that it might flourish, because I feel like we're in such a new place that all we can do is feel the guidance, do the impulse of what is coming forward in this moment, and that because we're walking in new shoes and we have no idea what that is going to even evolve to. And these autists, the collective consciousness of the autists, and it includes, for me, obviously, it includes other persons with different kinds of, quote, disabilities. I have a son with Down syndrome. I'm assuming that you've worked with other families. I don't know who caregivers and the quote, the nervous system regulation, because that can run a gamut of not just autistics but other kinds of children that families might be raising, and it speaks to, like, I really feel like they're really coming online as a collective, and they're really guiding us through this of what they, not that what they want to see, but this evolution, this co-evolution, like like you talk about, between with families, with parents, that we're co-evolving into something different. And so these centers, group homes, quote, group homes, are going to evolve into something that we can't fully imagine, and we can't think about it the same way that we're used to. They don't want the old model. And what that looks like then is, but anyway, if you could speak to that a little bit and how that came about for you.
That, and as you say, it is evolving, and yet there are very core needs that also haven't changed. And but
Yeah.
what happened was that it was during COVID. I was already getting this training that was allowing me to understand that where I place my thoughts and energy create my reality. And I had somehow pierced the veil and was in the middle of COVID with my family on holiday in Costa Rica. And, that was in itself crazy. And having said that, we have always traveled with Leah since she was a baby. And interestingly, that stems back to when Dov and I, my husband and I, got married. We went backpacking in Central America, where we were in our late 20s, and it was before we moved to New York, and we were in Ecuador, and then we decided, oh, we'd heard we could jump on a boat at the end, just and get it for reduced prices. So next thing you know, we're in the Galapagos on this boat trip, and Dov and I had pre-kids, and we met a family there that were traveling, a couple with two children, and their 13-year-old son had a syndrome where he was mobile and able to communicate, but there were delays, and we at the time were like, that's amazing that you're doing this.
Hmm.
You've been friends with this family, and there was sort of like this kind of agreement between us that, if this happens to us, I don't think we, of course, well, who knew what was going to come, but if this, we're not going to stop our lives. I think
Mm.
that was the feeling. We're not stopping our lives.
Wow.
Notice that thought.
Yeah.
That thought of I'm not stopping my life has carried me through many experiences over the last 19 years with Leah.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to my detriment,
Mm-hmm.
because I have made choices based on what I think I deserve, or from a victim mentality, or
Yeah.
I'm just going to go and do something anyway. And I've definitely been hurt as a result of that. And even when I say hurt, I mean it was painful, but I certainly learned from it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also, when you have, and again, what I've also said about the reticular activating system, like this was my filter. Of course, I can go traveling with my daughter. Yeah, of course, I can do, there's an assumption, right?
Yeah.
And when you have that assumption, be ready to experience what comes with that assumption,
Yeah.
one way or the other,
Yeah.
right? I'm not saying, oh, we bring on our tragedies and we
Yeah.
don't know coming our way. But to think that we don't have a part in this story is, I believe, would be to be missing a key piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are the story, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these children are part of our story, and they absolutely are now coming in to help us with our story
Yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was we arrived in Costa Rica because guess what? Hey, we're not going to stop traveling when the world is shutting down. And it wasn't a straightforward thing. There were many moments of doubt, but we made it.
Mm-hmm.
While I was in Costa Rica, a thought literally entered my head, and that thought was, you need to be creating a residence here.
Mm.
And and so I said to Dov, I think we need to be creating a residence here. It's called Casa Leia.
Mm.
And that was that. And then we went back to Israel, and all of my training was, okay, you need to focus on that reality. And I have no idea why I was so intent on that reality, because where we were in Israel, with all the challenges that Israel has, and there are many, um, they are actually very generous with disability stipends and grants.
Mm.
There is a culture of care there that is actually quite advanced, including the fact that they allow foreign workers to come in who are dedicated to families to assist with care in the home. So you do
Wow.
more support in Israel than you do in many other countries in the world.
Mm.
And there is a social system there that is supporting. So I, again, had been exposed to a certain, let's call it, and by the way, not all families choose to take care in their home. A lot of people don't. So even when you've got the options and the capability, people don't necessarily choose to help themselves or are even open to what that might bring them. So,
Mm.
but I was willing, I was open, I was certainly assuming a certain way that I want to live my life. And but something about life in Israel, and now it's much more clear, obviously, but back then, and I don't wish to in any way, like there are lots of families who are really struggling at this time in Israel and having a really
Yeah.
hard, and let's say I was lucky, if you want to call it that, but I don't believe too much in that either. I think you make a lot of choices for yourselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
But um, to cut a long story short, we ended up leaving Israel about 2 years ago and started world traveling with Leah to find where we are going to actually set up this residence. And the
Mm.
residence isn't just for the children, it's a family-run residence.
Yeah.
And we arrived in Costa Rica in October. I think, knew that it was going to be here, but we had to go through that process
Yeah.
of all these other countries
Mm-hmm.
before we sort of landed here. And um, that paradigm shift that you are speaking about, um, is that we are now being required to consider sovereignty, um, belonging,
Mm-hmm.
trust,
Mm-hmm.
care,
Mm-hmm.
autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
um, and at the same time, thinking about longevity.
Mm-hmm.
Not just my children are getting older there, I'm going to be getting older there too. So
Yeah.
what does this whole thing look like?
Mm-hmm.
And how are we planning for it?
Mm-hmm.
And there are some very new, very interesting technologies that are coming out now to support this new way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
allowing us to recognize that our nervous systems have been forced to work in a specific way
Yeah.
for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to respect that on one hand. There are also realities, finances,
Yeah.
trust, what happens when we're gone, inheritance, all these things. So all of this, which is sort of on one hand, the old world, but also has to be considered for this new world that
Yeah.
we're, what
Mm-hmm.
does that all look like? And
Yeah.
so that is now what we are building,
Mm-hmm.
a residence for those families with young adults who
Mm-hmm.
are spelling, or emerging spelling.
Mm-hmm.
Other forms of communication will, of course, be welcome.
Mm-hmm.
There is a specific mindset, though, that we are asking families
Yes.
to come in with.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah. That if you're coming in with a certain type of mindset, it's energetically, it has to all fit. And then people, even practitioners, professionals
Yeah.
that want to participate, it's going to have to be a certain mindset. And I know I got a little distracted because I actually feel Leia and Sammy at my brainstem. They're like communicating. I'm like, what are you saying? I can feel them talking to each other. But and I know a lot of other families, not a lot of around the world, that are very key and interested in building these kind of centers and things. And I don't think we're at the point where you are right now. Like we live in Carmel, California, and we've been here, I don't know, like 24 years. And when I got here, I felt like I'm home. This is my home. But never dreamed about building kind of a center or anything. But I, for us, I mean, I had a similar kind of vision in, I would say, like 2014 from Sammy, and she transmitted this image of like a building, and it's beautiful, fountain and water. So she transmits things to me like in visions. But that had the energy of this center, and one of the core aspects of it, and like you said, some might be living there. It might be just community. Others who might be working there. There might be like other kind of tiny homes around for some who can live semi-independently, and you have support. But one key aspect that I always felt was, why would people want to why would people want to support this? Why would they want it in the community? And it's because of their consciousness, their level of consciousness, the energy, and what comes through them by being in their presence. That is going to be a very key aspect. Like Sammy calls the center here, the Center for Omnipresent Living. Like we haven't been omnipresent like literally in our body, to bring that core spiritual aspect of who we're each meant to be, to really bring it here, embody it down to your own root, individually. So, because they have to be valued for who they are, you know, that they are, right now in our systems, especially like in the US, right, they're considered like burdens on society because they don't, quote, produce anything, material wise, like what we see. But they're here contributing something massive. And they've been doing it through their physical body, which makes it difficult for them then and the families to care for them and to then have people see them as something to be valued and not, looked down upon. And this is part of the kind of scaffolding that the telepathy tapes kind of brought. There's more going on, so people are kind of looking, right? They're interested, but it's now kind of converging to a whole different level. And I was meeting with a mom last night, and her son was coming in, and he literally, and she's on the call here. I don't know if I can mention his name, so if it's okay, then I'll mention his name. But he literally came into the room. He sat down on a couch, and he wanted to read some poetry to me, or in the, Marianne says it's Marianne's son. She was the first interview, her son Luke. And he literally came in and sat down, and he wanted to read, some poems and things out of a book that he likes. And he started reading. And I mean, I wasn't even listening because his voice and his body were just transmitting such incredible energy that Marianne and I both felt like we were on drugs. I mean, it was literally so mind altering just from his voice, you know, and what he was showing me was that this collective consciousness of the autists, right, they're reorganizing. I don't know. He was showing me like that he was calling them zephyrs. Like, zephyrs are those what do they call them? Balloons.
Yeah, the air balloons.
Yeah, the air balloon things. Yeah, but they were like kind of organizing around the planet. There were groups of them, almost like they're riding different ones, and they are their presence is shifting. Their energy body is shifting more to more physical, and literally they're going to be in their presence. People are going to make mind-boggling changes to their awareness and consciousness just by being around them. So these centers, I feel like, are going to be part of that. And so, yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to isolate them, but like you're saying, right, it's the process. Like, as we're transitioning and evolving and helping the planet evolve, then, we're building these kind of places that look separate, but then people are going to start coming for like the retreat that you say.
Exactly. So it's not, I don't see any sort of isolation process here taking
Yeah.
place. It as it is a center of coherence, which
Mm-hmm.
is necessary for this planet to start to heal the immense polarity and
Yes.
extremism that is taking place now, and that these centers are places where families are being invited to redefine themselves in an environment that will prioritize regulation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like, right? It's on so many different levels. And actually, it was Katie in one of our classes that we just were running now, and she ran a guided meditation, and she said, it's like something that you hear, but something inside of me resonated. She was just, you have endless love.
Mm.
And I, it wasn't just to me, we all have endless love. And,
Yeah.
and look at how much love we give to our children, to our families, to so many different things. We give so much love. And yet, there are these bands of survival that are holding us in a very specific pattern
Yeah.
most of the time. And it's only when we let down our guard or relax for a second or take a shower or get in our car that we suddenly just breathe a little bit, and new information can come through, and this love can be extended.
Yeah.
And so centers of coherence aren't just places for people to calm down their nervous systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? So key for
Mm-hmm.
this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
But once you do that, and also recognizing, by the way, the resistance in our bodies to come out of a state of being in fight or flight and hypervigilant, and doesn't feel safe to do that at all. But if you can allow that to happen, emotions to start to arise, connecting to that knowing place,
Mm-hmm.
living a more sort of wholesome life,
Mm-hmm.
nature in abundance,
Yes.
caring self, prioritizing all of those things, your thoughts will change.
Yeah.
You will have access to information that you cannot possibly have if you are in a state of fight or flight, freeze, locked into a certain belief system.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen in these centers, is
Mm-hmm.
they will allow a kind of freedom to start to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the retreats and everything that will be run there is as an extension of that,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Where can our thoughts go?
Mm-hmm.
What new information can we bring in
Mm-hmm.
to create this new planet that's being required at this time, not to mention co-creating with the universe,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when I'm
Absolutely.
in that spaceship,
Mm-hmm.
it's a literal physical space,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Also our relationship in space.
Yes. Yep. Because they're in a different space. Our kids are,
They're in a different space.
yeah, they're not seeing the same reality that, well, they see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in a different space. Absolutely. Um, yeah, there's several things with that because these centers, what I feel like they need to be built around the world somehow. So, I mean, feel like other parents will get the memo or whatever, wherever they need to place it, but these centers will be around the world because it's needed. Like what I saw from the Autism Collective in, I don't know, like 2019, 2020, is that their collective consciousness actually had merged with Gaia's consciousness. So they are operating as like one, in a sense. And Gaia is bringing their field down. She's pulling them down, let's say, and the planet is changing so that we're shifting, energetically shifting up. They're coming down, and part of what these centers do, and they're located in different areas, is to help repair the grid. Because in repairing the grid, which has been locked, let's say, in density, let's just say that these higher dimensional genetics that makes up the 12-dimensional human, which is what these autists are bringing. They're bringing back this lost genetic aspect to the planet, and the grid has to be healed and repaired in different areas to continue the evolution. So it's not just a need for families, but
No,
it's a planetary need.
oh
And
no,
yeah,
definitely need for families. Like that is, on one
part of
hand, I could give that, and I do say that, that's the big concern every family has. What happens when I'm
yes,
gone?
yes,
So yeah, I'm solving that problem
yes, yes. But we
in
can
a,
only serve, right, a handful, quote, at a time. And then and as mothers, obviously our children, for you, Leah, for me, Sammy, and my son Chris, are like the love motivators in a sense as mothers, you know, but yeah, and kind of expanding that out. We can only kind of handle a certain amount, let's say, meaning because there is a physical burden to us, right? To have to execute that's the third dimensional aspect, like, yeah, getting wills done and, trust. And, we deal with the same kind of things because it's like, okay, well, we can't just dream this lofty dream and think, well, it's all going to be handled someday because the planet is changing. It's like, because we don't know like that how long it's going to take for that to happen. And it's the love, right? The endless love that you mentioned, that is kind of a driving force to, it gives us the strength to execute this, because it has to be planned still. It's a nice dream, and it's a lofty dream, and but I feel like more and more the planet is going to support us, and that once we take one step, then the next piece of what we need shows up, and then the next piece and the next piece, and so on and so forth.
I would also say that there are already examples of this taking place. There are, they don't necessarily need to, and this is just purely from this practical management side. There are already examples of communities, who are succeeding,
Yeah,
and there's also a lot of communities that haven't succeeded, frankly, and that
mm,
there's a lot of knowledge that's come out of that too.
yeah,
And new technologies, whether it's governance, finance, relational conflict within community, these are all topics that it's not like they haven't existed, but we've had systems that have sort of supposedly helped manage them, but look at where we are today. And so I think, people are beginning to realize, oh, well, I can't rely on that to be taking place. And I don't know where this is going to be taking place. And then so our survival mindset, which becomes very isolated when we feel fear. It's like I'm just gonna hunker down. I'm
yeah,
gonna separate myself from everyone and just wait for this to pass. But we're all understanding that we are going through some profound cycle here of change.
yeah,
That either we are going to embrace this and be open enough to explore, well, what does this look like now? What is, in fact, being asked from us to live together,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
We don't have to do this on our own anymore,
Right.
but so, well, how do I do that with other families? This financial piece, the
Yeah.
planning piece, all of these things, what do they look like as a living, breathing system?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, is is already happening, frankly.
Hmm. Hmm.
In,
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's the piece you mentioned earlier too. Is it's bringing together people who with similar mindset and not I shouldn't just say mindset, but energetically aligned. Because the difficult thing with language, like you talked about earlier too, is in this other piece of language is that we can all talk the same language and we use words about oneness and we're all one, and can have different connotations to people what that means. you know Even though you would think that it wouldn't, but in the actual living, what does that mean for everybody to have agreement, and what does that mean to be able to live together, to be able to.
Conversely, what does it mean if I'm not happy with something?
Yeah.
And how do I work through that, right?
Hmm.
Where can I show my vulnerability? Is it okay to be vulnerable? How is it okay that other people are going to see me today and I'm not going to be performing and
Yeah.
I'm a very weak state? Or and how does a collective support that,
Hmm.
right? We're not only here to be mission driven and accomplishing, and
Yeah.
so how do we provide a living, breathing system that allows for it all and
Hmm.
yet at the same time allows us to thrive?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's a huge shift
Hmm.
in um, in how we have thought we can survive.
Yeah. Yeah, like you're saying, it's about thriving, that everyone can thrive,
It,
and it's not.
without yeah, but without kind of bypassing everything that's required and recognizing, in fact, what's causing us to very much suffer at this time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So all of that is, prioritizing. This isn't just about the kids.
Yes.
We are central to this whole, they are asking us to grow
Hmm.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because really the whole planet has been not thriving
No.
and struggling to survive, to be stressed, and we're not the only ones stressed. The Western culture really, indoctrinates performance, linear thinking, right? And being disconnected. You just have to
Yeah,
keep driving yourself.
also massive extraction and taking
Yes, siphoning.
um,
Yep.
and not considering our part in nature,
Yes.
the regenerative piece of what in fact is being required at this time to take care of our planet.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and become much more mindful of what we're putting in our body or what we're exposing ourselves to. Or so all of this is without, we're not looking to build new religions here. We are
Right.
looking to just create a living system that removes some of the chains, frankly, that have been
Yeah.
holding us at this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Um, so, anybody have any questions? Yeah, let's see if people have questions. I know we've gone a while, but I know this is a kind of a really hot topic, and maybe we'll continue on another time, because I know a lot of other, well, I'm sure a lot of other families are thinking about this as well. But yeah, any questions that people might have, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. I mean, I know we can talk about nervous system regulation and things like that, but yeah, maybe we should let people go at this time. But I know the whole nervous system regulation thing, I mean, that's a whole, I think, topic in itself. Maybe you can mention just a few things or a couple of things about what you feel are key to nervous system regulation, to, kind of thing.
Nervous system regulation occurs when we start to become aware of why we are doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish that it's not like I can just throw out a tip and
Yeah.
say, do this and you'll get nervous system regulation, which unfortunately is the culture we are living in.
Mm-hmm.
Wants just the pill or the something to make it go away.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that we are constantly responding to our environment, and that environment, then those what we understand from our interaction with the world then becomes a living wired program within our system,
Mm-hmm.
is what caregivers are dealing with all the time. So they are constantly reacting to the outside world,
Mm-hmm.
constantly planning what's next, or predicting, is he or she going to do this, or oh, they've just behaved like that, what does that mean? And so we are surrounded by, let's call it, data points that
Mm-hmm.
are coming at us all the time. And we're also constantly trying to protect ourselves from, well, what if this happens? And I need to make sure. So we're mitigating the whole time our
Yeah.
circumstances to enable us to feel that we are in some way in control. But what we don't understand here, and this is sort of almost like the paradox of what we're living, is that we think that by controlling something, that our worlds will be better, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, well, if I just get that under control, then I'll be okay. Then I can just go back to what I think I need to be doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, with the caregiving situation, we're living with the unexpected all the time.
Yeah.
That assumption of, well, things are going to get better and then I can go back to living my life, it doesn't really happen the way that perhaps we see neurotypical homes managing somehow to kind of hold it all together.
Yeah.
And when you speak about trauma, actually much of the trauma that's happening for families is just sort of being in these loops of micro stresses, because obviously there are those big events that have happened that none of us can forget, and those are big stressful moments that may also have created trauma in our lives. But much of the trauma that we live with in our lives is accumulated stress,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just caused us to contract in our bodies, make very specific choices, and live out a very specific reality because of it.
Mm-hmm.
When we're starting to think about building a new relationship with our nervous system, we have to understand what aspects of ourselves are still very much living with a certain set of beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if we break it down, why have we been caught? What's causing those beliefs, and are they true to right now? So when you're saying, Sammy's speaking about omnipresence, it's like really what she's saying is, can you just come back here into the right here and now?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
instead of letting your thoughts go off to wherever they are, you're
Mm-hmm.
not actually here right now. You are in that what if, or well, that happened last time, or I'm waiting for it to happen again, and or I just need this to happen in order for this, or even worse, like self-criticism, inadequacy, guilt, self-judging. I'm not good enough. I'm not. So all of this is going on, and we're walking around with it all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we speak about building a new relationship with our nervous system or self-regulation, it's can I start to build these micro moments in my day where I step out of that known programming?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much resistance am I even feeling in my body to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've all had situations where we know we've got to sit down to do something, whether it's writing an essay to doing our taxes to whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
And you'll be circling your house. Oh, well, I'll just make myself a cup of tea and then I'll go to the bathroom and then let me just clean up the kitchen a bit more. And what you're doing in that moment is just calming your nervous system through known activities that are predictable and you've done them 1,000 times so that you can just kind of sit down and do
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I'm available.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can receive the training. And then I can think a little bit differently about something. So building a new nervous system is a constant rewiring
Mm-hmm.
and sort of providing opportunities in your day to start to become aware of why am I behaving the way that I am right now?
Mm-hmm.
What else could I choose to be thinking instead?
Mm-hmm.
And building the consistency there,
Mm-hmm.
not just looking for that consistency to be coming from the outside world, from, oh, if my kid stops banging their head, or if they do what they're supposed to be doing, then I can. That consistency isn't going to come from that, or as we already know, less so.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency has to come from us, and that takes training, that takes work, it takes attention,
Mm-hmm.
support.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
So,
I'm
you said you're wrapping up like an 8 week program.
regulation journey. Yeah.
And is that something?
We're going to run another one in May.
Okay, that's what I was
We're going to
asking.
run, yeah, we're going to do another one in May, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll start signing up for that soon. And
Is that for caregivers and
absolutely,
nervous system regulation?
it's called Building a new relationship with your nervous system. It's an 8-week journey. We
Mm-hmm.
meet once a week. There's also a group, and people have an opportunity to start to explore these ideas, which they
Mm-hmm.
we all have an understanding about it but it's like, well, how does this apply to me? And this is specifically actually for caregivers with children who are also spellers or
Mm.
emergent spellers. So there is a sort of commonality of like we are being required to regulate with our children now
Mm-hmm.
in ways, and
That's great.
that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because I've always found, in my own inner work and stuff, that when you work in a group, that that group energy and the consciousness, things shift in us faster. And so, yeah, thank you.
I've just put in actually, this is the existing program that we're running right now. It will be the same program.
Okay. Tanya
Recommend.
put the link in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there isn't yet the sign up for it, but
Yeah, I'll
if you
put the,
did, you can, yeah, you have my links as well
yeah, let
in.
me copy that and I'll put it in my notes and then I'll put it in the bottom of the,
Thank you.
yeah. Come on, let me copy this. Why can't I copy it? Um, mm, I forward it to myself? No, why can't I? Oh, come on. Oh, let me see.
And in some ways, what we're doing here is we're creating a new level of consciousness for ourselves,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what our children need from us.
Absolutely.
All of my research has been into how can I elevate myself energetically in
Mm-hmm.
order to be able to assist my child not only with spelling, but also communicate telepathically, which isn't only just with my child or for the purpose of being able to communicate with my child, but we as co-creators with the universe
Mm-hmm.
are to become much more receptive to
Yes.
all possibilities. And
Mm-hmm.
now time, like there is a freedom now that is that we've never had before, certainly not in our known history.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This is part of the evolution of the planet, and getting back to how we're supposed to be operating, let's just say. So, yeah, well, if there aren't any other questions, then let's wind it down because I know it's getting late. We've been on for a couple hours, or almost a couple hours. But thank you very much to all of you that came. I know that centers and things is a very much on a lot of parents' minds. It feels like there's a timeline convergence now of our children of all ages that are wanting to us to look at that a little bit closer. One thing that Luke had shared last night as well was that he was showing me that there's a network, and it's at the eighth dimensional level. So people aren't necessarily going to be aware of it for the moms, but there's a network of the moms now that is being created energetically, kind of created. So we'll see what where that goes. We may be sharing information amongst each other in dreams and telepathically or energetically that we may not even be aware of, but something may arise in each of us to look at things differently.
I think that's already happening, that network of, I mean,
Yeah,
we're understanding that that's already coming. We're
yeah,
already, the network is clear. It's now
it's true.
it's giving us even more of an environment to share what is necessary now, because that as when that love comes through, which as we know is there all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll see how all of this evolves, and I'm, you know, curious to see for us here where we are how that's going to evolve as that impulse is getting stronger. So yeah, and definitely want to keep up with how things are going for you guys there. I mean, I shouldn't say you guys, but you ladies with Leia, and how the program is evolving, how Casa Leia is evolving there. So thank you so much.
Oh, please, thank you. I appreciate this time, and thank you for all that you do. It's so necessary.
Yeah, thank you. I know we're all inspiring each other, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you, Joni, for your love, and everybody who was able to make it live. Anyway, all right. Lots of love. Take care, everybody. Thank you.